The past, the present, the future. This is Friday Night's Fright. What the planet is listening to.
Hello and welcome to episode 85 of Friday Night Fright and day number 8 of Book Calvacadia. Day number 8? I guess it is. Wow, cool. Anyway, so this is episode 85. So this is going to be quite cool. This episode's dealing with particularly interesting subject today as part of Book Calvacadia. So this episode's going to be dealing with 4-2 and the first episode of Agent Carter. So yeah, sounds quite cool, doesn't it? I haven't seen 4-2 in a long time. I remember it being bloody terrible when I saw it, but it has certain horror, fantastical, grim, fairy tale aspects that lend it way to an actual episode of Friday Night Fright and part of Book Calvacadia, so that'll be good. And Agent Carter, I thought Hayley Atwell was really good in Captain America, and she's being a really good actress and some other stuff, but she does a great job of Peggy Carter, so it'll be interesting to see if that works as part of the series. I don't know how many episodes I'm going to get through. In terms of Book Calvacadia, it'd be good to maybe get through 2 seasons, but that's probably unlikely. Anyway, I'll be back in a second to discuss some of my thoughts about 4-2 and 4 and how I think the character progressed up to this point and how I felt watching it in time. I can go a bit more in depth than it was bloody terrible. So I'll be up just after a brief word from our sponsors. So, 4-2, well, I say it's bloody terrible in the opening bit, but a bit more backstory. So, I was kind of cooling when I saw this back in the day. I was kind of cooling on Marvel Cinematic Universe because I wasn't terribly impressed by the Avengers or Iron Man 3. And I thought, well, I wanted to go and see every MCU movie in cinema, and I still do, mostly. And so I thought, well, I got to see 4-2 because I think Chris Hemsworth was good in 4 and the Avengers, and the flaws with the movies weren't necessarily his fault. And I saw 4-2, and this is just my reaction from back in the day. I thought they did very little with what he actually is good at, because Chris Hemsworth is a funny, charming guy who should be in funny, charming adventures. He can act, don't get me wrong, but even his best stuff like Rush, there's an element of charm to it, he's playing off his perceived nature of his real life self and his acting ability, and it's a really, really good movie. And I thought 4-2 did not do that. It was grim, it was serious, it was boring, it was really boring, and the villains were shit. So yeah, but maybe they'll change nowadays. I saw parts of Iron Man 3 I liked more than the first time I saw it. My overreaction to the movie went up a little bit, not too much but a bit, so hopefully 4-2 with benefit of hindsight would be a bit better. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll work in terms of the overall character development more than it did before, as I'm watching these in quite quick sequential order and on Disney Plus in really high resolution, so who knows. Anyway, I'll be up to that in just a second. Oh, that was bad. That was not good. I have to admit, watching 4-2, I zoned out a lot. I was playing on my Switch. I was playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 because this movie is just not very interesting. It's a low point for the MCU in terms of the movies I've watched so far. It's by far the lowest point. I criticised Iron Man 3, but that did some interesting things with Iron Man building off the Avengers, going down route of the Batman often goes down in Justice League stories, especially the initial ones, where it's this human man who gets seen at universe full of gods, monsters, demons, time travel, reality warping, and all of this stuff, and it breaks his mind. That's actually an interesting route for a comic book character to go down, and the reinforcement of who Iron Man was. It wasn't just the suits, it was Tony Stark and the suits, and it was Tony Stark in general. Regardless whether he has the suits or not, he is Iron Man. This movie didn't really go down that route. Iron Man felt like a finale to the trilogy. This is not a trilogy. This is the second movie, so obviously 4 can't do quite as much to that. But honestly, there was some stuff in there which will have resonance for later on, but there wasn't a lot. I think I should start by saying Malekith the villain is absolutely terrible. I mean, I get what they were going for. They wanted to portray a contrast to 4-4's charming and funny and adventurous and a bit of a roguish pirate, and Malekith is bit shit. He's just stoic, matter-of-fact, Dark Elf character. And I think the problem is, I imagine they want to get away from the idea of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and the elves having faint air of superiority, but in process they've done nothing. Christopher Eccleston at the time saying that he wanted to play this character as like a monster, a universal monster style villain, and maybe that's the intent, but it didn't really succeed. It just makes you think, why bother casting Christopher Eccleston if you do nothing with him? Maybe Marvel would do better nowadays. They do seem to have picked up pace villain-wise a bit, but yeah, it's just nothing. And when the villain falls down, the movie will struggle. I think Loki was in this movie too much, but I get why he was, because the Avengers was such a hit, and he's such a big part of it, and he's such a big part of for a story. You know, it's a bit like Magneto and X-Men movies. If you're going to a Thor movie, you need to have Loki in it. And they put him in way too much. And I get where they were going for. They wanted to do the fallout of the Avengers, and that's relatively interesting. So, like, this big movie, Loki, what Loki did in the Avengers does have to be addressed, and make it part of the movie, and making it a key part and having those aspects in it is good. But there's still too much Loki. He's not the villain of the movie, you know, that's Malekith. If Loki is manipulating things on the sideline, that'd be fine, but he isn't. So, and it's also factoring the Avengers. Thanos says, "Wherever you go, Loki will find you," and there's no hint of that here. There's no worry. There's no panic, and it just the overall gist of it seems to be that they didn't really have a grasp yet of what Thanos was trying to do. Because surely Odin would be interested in who Loki was working for and why, and the fact that he had 2 magical objects on Earth and all of that, but he doesn't seem really give a shit. It's like, and neither does Thor. Thor knew Loki's working for someone, but it's never addressed here. Almost like this script was written before they finalised the Avengers, and then they never updated it. Other things, Odin, I feel uncomfortable in this movie because I don't really I get the impression that we're sort of meant to think Odin's a warmonger, and that's true, but at the same time, it's almost like the movie wants us to sympathise with him a bit, but he's a horrible, horrible, godly being in this movie. He's just vile, like, the stuff he does, the wording he uses, like, he's pretty awful in this movie, and his comment near the end of, "I'm not like Mark, if I'll win," that's really messed up. And underscores the biggest issue of these movies. Asgard kind of sucks in these 4 movies. It really does. And I think that's a problem. They wanted to build up this magical place so that when Thor rebelled against it, it would hit us harder when we saw see the Unbelly. But it's always been a bit crap. And I think that's in the representation, visualization of it. You see something like Middle Earth, and it's mythic and it's grandeur, but it's not kind of rubbish, I guess, or poorly designed. Doesn't feel like doesn't really feel like they got a handle on what they want Asgard to be. It's meant to be a fantastical place and 9 realms and all of that, but it doesn't really come across the way they intended, I don't think. It's not really very mythic. It's not really very interesting. It's a bit like on Doctor Who with Gallifrey. Gallifrey's boring, and the Time Lords are boring. And Doctor's interesting because he veers away from all their stupid rules and all their crap. And Thor's the same way. Thor, I'm going to say it might sound controversial, Thor is more interesting anywhere other than Asgard. All this stuff about he will be king, all that stuff, it's not interesting because clearly the character does not want it and is not suited for it. And the constant reinforcement of he should be king and then going back on that, it's like Thor as king would be boring. I'm sure there could be a superhero character who's also king and that could be done really well and interesting. But these movies don't work for that because it's so outside our realm of knowledge as how there's no setup for how the Asgardians handle things, for example, politics wise or anything like that. Whereas if you had, for example, a character in charge of a fictional country on Earth, there'd be more diplomacy and plans and we'd understand the process. But Asgard, we really don't. And they were on whether they're gods or not way too often. So, like, we're not gods, we're aliens. As exemplified by Jane saying, talk about how it's a splicing machine that she's in. They're like, it's a soul forge, and she's like, it's a splicer. And so, like, look, you don't need to keep throwing lines of dialogue in. You don't need to go, oh, this is like something we have on Earth. It's a fantasy movie. Why can't it just be a soul forge? Why do you have to go, oh, human beings are getting close to this sort of technology? It's like, no one gives a shit. Stop trying to downplay the magical aspects of this franchise, These are gods. Thor is a god. Loki is a god. Odin's a god. Yes, they may die, but compared to humans, they're gods. They're not strictly aliens, because Thor's power level and Odin's power level and Loki's power level and Frigga's power level are so far beyond any other Asgardians. I mean, Heimdall, sure, he has some, but most Asgardians are just really, really tough aliens. Really, really tough beings. But the upper echelon of, like, society in these areas, they are pretty much gods. Like, the others are kind of like demigods. These are gods. Like, the stuff Thor can do, like, literally whipping Malekith's ass all over the screen, that's godlike. Like, clearly. And the whole alien thing just feels like a cop-out. Like, where we come from, science and magic are the same thing. No, they're not. They're not the same thing. Science and magic are not the same thing. That's not how it works. Seriously, like, that annoys me. And I think the rambling just because this movie's nothing. They had for example, here's another issue of the movie. They had, unlike the last movie with Kenneth Branagh, unlike the Avengers Joss Whedon, and unlike Iron Man 3 with Shane Black, and Joe Johnson for Captain America, and Jon Favreau for Iron Man 2. This movie, they had Alan Taylor, who directed some really good episodes of, was it Game of Thrones? Yeah, Game of Thrones. He did a really good job, but he's a TV director. He directs TV. He might direct visually interesting TV, but he doesn't necessarily come up with the stories or the plotting or anything like that. So you're giving him the script, and he's not bringing much to the table. I mean, you saw it with Terminator Genesis too, where it was a really, really bad movie. Not shot badly, not visualized badly, but just, like, he doesn't bring any... If you give him good script, he can work off it. But if he doesn't have good script, you're screwed. And that's a problem, because this was when the first time they decided to try going away from the O-tier aspect, I guess, where, like, it was almost like the creative committee thought, we'll get someone in who'll do what we want them to do. But then they end up cutting loads of Alan Taylor's stuff. He wanted to make, by all accounts, an even darker movie, which sounds stupid and terrible, because, this Thor was the original Thor movie is its best when it was silly and light and fun. That's what the franchise should be. And this movie was way too serious and up so ass and really boring as a result. So what do I give this movie? 2 out of 5. It's better than some of the DC ones I've seen, but they were more fun to watch. Like, Suicide Squad is not a great movie or even good movie, but it's more fun to watch than this movie because of the banter and the interplay and stuff like that. This movie's competently made. It's decent. It's okay, I guess, but it's just really boring to watch. I would not recommend it. I would not advise you watch it. I think they're trying to ignore it as much as possible in the MCU. And yeah, luckily, up next in terms of the movies is something which is, I remember it being a lot better, and I have high hopes. So I'll get to that at the end of the episode, but for now, 2 out of 5. And I'll be back in a sec with a quick review of Agent Carter, Episode 1. So, what do I know about Agent Carter? Not a lot, really. I know it's kind of a spin-off of Captain America, First Avenger. I know it's an early attempt by Marvel even to leverage their MCU success. And apparently Kevin Feige, the guy in charge who oversees Marvel Studios and Marvel Cinematic Universe, has a strong hand in it. It does seem like Agent Carter is probably their pre-Disney Plus attempt to branch out and do MCU officially vetted shows. I mean, stuff like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of loosely in the MCU, but not really involved that much. but Agent Carter seems directly related, although it's also related to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so God knows. But yeah, I mean, it just makes you think there's lots of things in the MCU they could have done as Disney Plus shows, like The Warriors 3 from 4, for example. Warriors 3 and Sith and Heimdall could probably had their own show. Maybe it would make their characters a bit better, because they're all really flat in movies. And a few other bits and bobs, like Howling Commandos from Captain America First Avenger. These characters who could have probably had their own, not super high budget shows, but decently budgeted and reasonably watchable and diverting. They could have had that, and they decided not. Well, they didn't have Disney Plus at times. It's not like they decided not to. It's more like they just didn't have the opportunity to do it. But anyway, I'm going to have a watch of the Agent Carter pilot now, and I'll be back in a few minutes, or a few seconds even in your time, to discuss my thoughts on it. So, Agent Carter episode 1, it's okay. It's not the worst thing that's ever been made. Again, the MCU at this point, everything's competent. Everything looks good. Everything's well made, well shot, well acted, reasonably well written, competent. It looks and feels like what it's meant to feel. In this case, it feels like a limited series TV show, but there's certain movie aspects that par out, and it does have the guiding hand of Marvel Cinematic Universe in play. Two of the writers, I forgot their names already, but the two of the guys who are overseeing Captain America movies writing-wise, and later on a lot more Marvel Cinematic Universe, are involved in the created show under the tutelage of Kevin Feige, and it's got Hayley Atwell, and it's got flashbacks to the events of Captain America, and it's also got more Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark, which I'll get to in a sec. So clearly some money's been spent on this, and it looks and feels like a TV show. It looks and feels like a very cinematic TV show. There's only one problem. You're watching it and you're thinking, what's the end game? And by end game, I mean what they trying to achieve. And it doesn't really look like there's much they specifically were trying to achieve, other than let's make a TV show set in Marvel Cinematic Universe we have control over. But I mean, fundamentally, here's the problem I have with Agent Carter. The end game is clearly Peggy is one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., along with Howard Stark is one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they're not the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they're still working. She's working for the Special Science Reserve, or whatever it's called, and he's a assumed war profiteer or black market weapons dealer. So immediately, I mean, I get what they're going for. They want to build Peggy up into that, but that to me was the interesting part. It was sort of like seeing Peggy as one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's interesting seeing Peggy as a maligned woman who's treated in very sexist fashion by the arseholes of day. Not so interesting. I mean, in some ways it is. I'm watching Morning Show at the moment, and they're dealing with sexual politics and the Me Too movement and stuff like that, which is actually really fascinating to watch, taking what would have been a comedic look at morning news and giving it a bit more weight and angst. But the problem is, if you're going to do that, you need better writing. This is primarily a superhero universe, so the writing's not exactly A game, if that makes any sense. And as the writing's not A game, the talk of sexual politics and Peggy being overlooked isn't given weight it deserves, and that's frustrating because Hayley Atwell is genuinely a really good actress. Dominic Cooper is a really good actor. James Darcy as Jarvis is a really good actor. So you've got some, and Lindsay Fonseca's a decent actress. So you've got some good actors in this cast who could have done something for that material, but they're not given a chance because it's set in the MCU, and you can have surface level characterization. I mean, you watch Iron Man 3 and Tony Stark's post-traumatic stress disorder after the Avengers and anxiety. That's interesting. That's a bit more of a shift in character, but it's still resolved with, you're a mechanic, won't you build something? And then gets over his PTSD. I mean, there's hints of it, I'm sure, and they're going to be popping up, but it's not really a problem. It's like an episode. It's like you're watching a TV show and there's an episode where a character is addicted to cigarettes, and then it's rarely mentioned again, except for once in a while. You know, we're getting service level characterization, But something like Peggy Carter, which is trying to deal with weightier themes, needs weightier execution. You need proper dramatic. I hate saying this because it sounds like a cop-out, but you need to be gunning for an Emmy if you're going to be doing something like this. You need to be going for the awards. You need to be writing with that in mind. And that's not a reflection on Hayley Atwell, because she does a really good job, and God knows she's giving her all to the material. It's just, if you were going to do a Peggy Carter spin-off, and you were going to be exploring it, you just wish it would be handled a bit better. It's not like The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, I get the sense that, especially with how Rise Skywalker turned out, that Mandalorian was the focus of the Lucas Arts. They realised Rise Skywalker didn't really work the way they want to, and they thought, we will focus on Mandalorian, and so we have at least one amazing product coming out. I think maybe if Agent Carter came along nowadays and was pitched to Disney Plus, it'd be a different animal, because clearly some of these series like Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki, WandaVision, and the like are clearly getting lots of money spent on them, and they're going to be quite cinematic affairs. And Agent Carter seems like a hybrid of that. It seems like they wanted to do that equivalent on ABC, but with the way TV's working, you have to make concessions, you have to do app breaks and all that nonsense. Where something like Disney Plus, one best thing about Mandalorian is they can do episodes which are 35 minutes long if they want to, which is great because the episodes don't need to be a specific length. If material doesn't last to that point, don't drag it out. If the episode's 35 minutes long, don't drag it 40 minutes because it won't be as good. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy. I honestly, I don't think I'll be watching any more Agent Carter. It's not a bad show, but I have more than enough I need to watch. And be honest, after The Flash, I want to see where Flash goes. Like on Tuesdays, be honest, because that's really messed up. Like what Barry did in season premiere of season 2 was messed up. But I'm curious. I want to see how bad it gets in terms of his character. With Peggy Carter, I'm like, I'm not going to say that she only works with Captain America, because I don't think that's true. She's clearly capable of holding her own in a TV show, and she does a decent job for this one. It's just, it's serviceable, but that's it. I mean, if they want to bring out on Disney Plus, if they want to do a sequel series or something like that, brilliant, awesome, I'd love that. Because, I mean, but this just feels like there's an idea and there was a way to achieve it, but then they had to make concessions to network suits, where stuff like Mandalorian, I get the impression Lucasfilm signs off on it and then just lets them make the damn show. That show feels very much like it's filtered through Jon Favreau's perspective, whereas this, I don't really get any sense of perspective. No. And I'm sure ABC is hoping for Chris Evans to cameo, despite the fact it doesn't make any sense. But, I mean, there was ways to explore the backstory of the past of Hayley Atwell's Peggy Carter and to show Dominic Stark in a different light, because they're both really good parts of Captain America, but this series doesn't really do anything for that. But George, something like Disney Plus, is this shit can still be canon. They can just do a Disney Plus follow-up at some point. I don't know. I don't know anyway. But it's watchable. I don't feel I have time to reset and watch that much more of it, unfortunately. So, yeah, so it's Peggy Carter episode 1. 3 out of 5. I don't want to give it a bad mark because it wasn't bad. It was just, I wasn't particularly interested. Anyway, I'll be back in the set to preview tomorrow's episode. So stay tuned. Hey, and there's another episode of the Friday Night Frighting Bag. Thanks for listening as always. It's pretty good this week. I'm glad that the Book Calvacadia seems to be going okay. I know it's not quite horror, but I wanted to do something different for May, and there you go. So I'm on long days now. But trust me, from June it's going to go back to full-on horror content. I'm really going to step up for that. Like I said, for the long days now, I'll be able to do some batch recordings, which would be good. Tomorrow is going to be Captain America and Winter Soldier, which I'm looking forward to, and because after Agent Carter and Thor 2, I think I need to see something that's genuinely good from Marvel Cinematic Universe. Anyway, until next time, this is Ian Austin signing off saying, remember, life is beautiful. And I'm sure you are too. I don't know you, but I'm going to assume you have at least inner beauty. Goodbye.